right. Once again, a very good afternoon. And I can see we have our guest with us, Mr. Raghavan, very much on the screen. A very warm welcome to you, sir. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us once again. With this, I would like to invite our founding president and chairperson, Dr. Indu Shani, to deliver the welcome address and also welcome Mr. Raghavan on the panel. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Aditya, and a very, very warm welcome, Ram. I know that you had some great difficulties this morning, but you still agreed to be with us, and thank you so much. And we wish you all the best for the family, whatever is happening. Just wanted to say that this is our monthly faculty development program that we do. And this particular program is when all the schools meet together. So we have the School of Design, the School of Media and Communication, the School of Management and Entrepreneurship, the School of Film and Animation, and all those schools together and the family and the faculty together meet. But for your session, the MBA students have also gate crashed. And so they are also all here because they said that they didn't want to miss. Some of them had actually worked with you earlier, and a whole lot of them are here. So we have about over 100, 120 people around here today. And the faculty represent all the 4 schools, as I talked about. So with this, I want to say a very, very warm welcome. Please be casual. It's only a kind of a fireside chat. We would have liked to have this fireside chat on the campus. Just before we closed, we had a session, our FTP session on campus, and all the faculty were there. It was during Christmas time. And it was amazing because, sitting across and faculty sitting with you and, chatting, it's a great feeling. But I'm sure we have to overcome all this. This will not last forever. And we will see you soon on campus with the faculty. But meanwhile, it's great to be together. And over to Minal, who is our she chairs our faculty development programs. She heads our interior design program in the design school, and whose students have worked for some time on the Colgate project. So over to you, Minal.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shani. And I would like to wish Ram a very, very wonderful new year and a very warm welcome to Atlas. I think this is one of the first times we have you as Atlas. And we're very much obliged to initiate this year with this interaction with you. So thank you so much for making it and giving us your time. So while many of us have had the privilege of interacting with Mr. Raghavan on campus also, and thereafter virtually last year, as our Atlas family grows, I would like to introduce Mr. Raghavan to many of our newer faculty and students who are present here today. Mr. Raghavan is the Managing Director of Colgate Palmolive. He provides strategic leadership to Colgate Palmolive India and South Asia since August 2019. However, not many, or maybe some of us do know that he joined Colgate Palmolive in 1997 as a management trainee, and it's been an inspiring 24 years plus journey with the company. As he assumed increasing levels of responsibilities and leadership positions across the globe, Hong Kong, China, Latin America. So, he has this unique balance of strategic, operational experiences, including in the innovation sector. We remember having conversations regarding this with him. And he has a great expertise in emerging markets, and he's very passionate about driving growth in any cultural environment. I think this is a very strong and powerful statement for all of us, and the versatility that that he could bring, and the knowledge and insight that he could bring to us. Mr. Raghavan holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from NM College of Commerce and Economics, and MBA from Jamnala Bajaj, and later on from the Tux School of Business. So, we can go on and on introducing Ram, but I guess I'll just hand over the session and call upon Siddharth to lead the fireside chat with Ram. And there are many faculty and students who are really having a chat.
Thank you very much, Meenal. Mr. Raghavan, it's a pleasure to have you with us. I think this is really exciting for us because actually you were the first person outside the university who knew that there was a university way back in, I think it was August of 18, when you visited us. So I think you've been our well-wisher and good luck mascot for the university. So thank you very much for being with us. We couldn't think of someone better to kick off our faculty development program for the year 2022. So thank you for being with us. It's a pretty informal environment. We have our faculty and our students who have actually, EQ'd up to ask their questions. And happy for you. It's freewheeling, so happy for you to pick up, different trends that that you see as we're going through. Before I call upon the first, who's the dean of our management school to ask a question, I think a question on everyone's top of the mind is that now that we're looking at, COVID from a third wave perspective, how are you as a leader, managing that? What are the things you're looking out for? What are the some of things that you learned from the last couple of waves? More from a, general leadership position of how should we tackle this? Some of us are in charge of sales, marketing. Some of us are in charge of academic delivery. Some of us are in charge of operations. There's a lot of uncertainty, but we know as Indians, as human beings, we have to continue to be resilient. How should we look at this? How should we move forward? That's really just the, love to hear your opening thoughts, and then I'll get on with the formal part of the section.
Thanks, Sid. More importantly, thanks, Indu. Thanks, Meenal. Honestly, all of you, first and foremost, Happy New Year to every one of you. I can't tell you what a privilege and honor it is for me. Meenal, listening to you, just for the record, I joined Colgate when I was 15 years old. So then work backwards, you can guess how old I am therefore, right? So despite the, hello, I think my internet has frozen.
We can hear you. We're able to hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
I just felt like I suddenly everyone was frozen at my end. Now, so I was just saying that I obviously joined Colgate when I was 15 years old, and you can do the math on how long, therefore, how old I am now based on that. I think COVID, if you step back and take a look at each wave, Siddharth, I think each one of them had different aspects to it. And I'll start there, and then I'll say what I believe would be some of the things that we're doing, and I think what would be critical for just about anyone and everyone to do. If you step back, wave one was really about supply chain challenges, getting manufacturing kickstarted again, getting setups up and running again. It was fundamentally getting, whether it was raw materials or people into factories or the output that got produced into the hands of customers, so on and so forth. I think wave one really was about supply chain. Wave two, interestingly enough, moved itself to consumer access, because wave two was more severe in nature. And what happened in our country was, while wave one had a relatively uniform approach to its the features or elements or structures of the lockdown across states, because it was centrally driven. In wave two, that got decentralized, and it became a state-by-state decision with certain core principles coming down from the center. So wave two had two aspects to it. Like I said, one was consumer availability got affected, whether stores were open for only 4 hours a day in certain locations like Bombay, or you were only allowed to visit certain kind of environments, or you couldn't go to a gym if you're in the services business, so on and so forth. I think consumer access became the single biggest hurdle, so to speak, right? And the second, I wouldn't say hurdle, but a degree of comfort that one had to get be comfortable with, was the fact that every state, and in fact sometimes even within a state, the how you went about managing it was going to vary, simply because the principles of the state were going to vary. So I think that was wave two. I think wave three is really going to be about the human element. And why do I say that? Because one common piece that I feel, at least that I have seen, was as humans, while we got phenomenally comfortable in a virtual environment, I think every one of us would admit that we perhaps OD'd a little bit on digital
finalization,
right? Whether that was on account of work hours just getting extended, whether it was schools having to deal with people in different locations and having to then rethink time as to when you could not do it. There was no concept of a lunch break. So I think the time variable got displaced and people's time was taken for granted, right? I think so that was one element that affected fatigue. The second thing is, I think we underestimate the power of relationships. We underestimate what happens when human beings come together and problem solve. The creativity, the ability to, bounce off each other's idea, and the simple element of, camaraderie, whether it's for bitching about your boss or, just catching up on neighborhood gossip, doesn't matter. But I think we underestimate that whole aspect of human relationships. And I think that's the second piece that I would say that worries me about this wave. And the third one, I think it was an outcome perhaps of the first point I made on fatigue, which is the impact of this on the mental health and wellness. So I think physically, a lot of people started, or at least I hope to believe a lot of people started changing behavior, right? Whether it was you were at least thinking about eating better or sleeping better or doing some form of exercise that got you out of your slumber. I think mental wellness was not paid enough attention to. And whether that mental wellness, like I said, was caused by extended hours of fatigue on account of that, whether it was about, just the lack of emotional connect, or the third aspect of, frankly, for many of us being cooped up in one room, in one spot, for 14 hours a day. While, we call it work from home sometimes, or learn from home, whichever part of however your access to being at home is, it almost felt prison-like sometimes, right? Because your life began by you getting out of a bed, changing. Sometimes most people didn't even bother changing their clothes, and then going and sitting somewhere and then being stuck in that one spot. So I think, to me, the third piece of it is the wellness aspect, which I think we'll have to pay a significantly greater amount of attention. So those are the three things that worry me the most. I think the good part is that there's been a hell of a lot of learning in terms of what we've all got comfortable with doing in a virtual environment. So it's a bit easier from that front. But I think the three things that worry me the most would be those three.
I think, very well said. The power of relationship. I would say all of us are truly now understanding that what it takes to nurture relationships, because really when everything was shut, it's really those relationships that came through. So I think that's really a valuable lesson for all of us. So moving, direction to some of the typical questions that you would, or atypical questions that you would get from, preschool profs. I'm going to call Professor Kamachi, who's the dean of our management and entrepreneurship school, a cyber security and a data expert. Kamachi ma'am, all over to you for your first question.
Thanks, Mr. Siddharth. Good afternoon, and thanks for this wonderful interaction. We are always excited and motivated to interact with you, Mr. Ram, especially our students. It was very informative to hear about the impact of pandemic in business and life. In the same context, I would like to ask you, the pandemic has accelerated technology adoption across the board. So we hear a lot about digitization everywhere. How has technology impacted FMCG business?
Thanks, Kamachi. Great question. And I'm going to use the word digitization more than I will use the word technology, because I think technology per se existed way before the pandemic, right? If you think about it, an airplane is technology. If you think a simple lever, a machine is technology. So technology has always existed. I think it's digitization really that's changed. And I look at it in perhaps three broad contexts, right? Context number one is what I call the spectrum of application. So classically, digitization or digital was confined to a few people or a few, now it's become universal. And I'll start off with education, right? If you had asked me to bet any amount of money, I'm not a gambling person, but if you had asked me to take a bet 10 years ago or 5 years ago and said, Ram, believe it or not, your kids would actually be studying at home for an entire year, and it wouldn't affect their future. And I would tell you, you know what, I don't know what you've been smoking, but hey, that's not going to happen, right? So I think the spectrum of application has broadened itself, whether that application is for productivity. So how has digitization helped me with productivity? Whether that spectrum of application is about speed or real-timeness, right? In the past, while technology existed, you never had, digitization gives you things literally in real time. And if you look at AI and ML, you could even predict, right? So the real-timeness of knowledge and information is another spectrum. The third is digitization actually helps free up your time. Today, there are tasks, there are things that you could digitize. Think about it as a simple task that you had to go and stand in a line to withdraw, to deposit money or transfer money to someone. You just put it on auto pay today. Now, we don't think of auto pay as digitization, funnily enough, but it is, right? So it's freed up your time. You've just put it in and you've saved yourself that much time to do whatever you want with it. And I also think the third aspect or the fourth aspect of the broader spectrum is the ability to manage and simplify vast amount of information. Things that were time consuming in the past have become much more simpler today thanks to it, right? So the first big pillar, I would say, on how digitization has changed or helped us evolve is the spectrum of application has become universal. The second, I think, and I'll give a little bit more of an industry context here now, is it touches everybody. So in the past, digitization, or I'll take technology since you use the word technology, and I'll use that to make my point. Machines, we had machines that helped us make 700 toothpaste tubes in a minute. Actually, we do it at 750 or 780 now, right? We always had that. But you still had a salesperson with a paper and pen going Kirana store to Kirana store and taking an order. So the first was technology. And what has digitization done is it now allows a salesman to take an order on a digital device. So real time, not only take an order, but we have predictive analytics in play that the minute the salesman walks into that, the store is geotagged. So on my device, if I walk into, let's say, Ambala Al Kirana store next to my house, immediately the app tells me what his history as order has been, based on the locality, what should be the set of products I should sell to him, when was the last time he bought, how many units did he buy. So now suddenly digitization has touched every aspect of the business. So that's the first part of touching every aspect of the business. The second is irrespective of the stakeholder. So I just gave you an example on how it has affected or is now integrated into the lives of, let's say, a salesman with a handheld device, right? The same thing is applicable to my consumer. So if I wanted to reach you in the past, I had no choice but to reach all of you, right? I would take a classic ad of mine, put it on television, and I would hope and pray to God that you were tuned into that channel. And when my ad came on, none of you were talking to each other or had gone out to the bathroom or had gone to get some food for yourself, right? Today, I can engage you when you want. I can engage you with the kind of bite-sizedness. So I don't have to serve you the same ad. If on television you have a choice, everyone didn't have a choice. All of us saw a 30-second or a 15-second commercial. Whereas today, if I know you respond better to a Facebook or an Instagram post, I can only talk to you through Instagram, right? So the engagement aspect, whether it's a consumer, whether it's a shareholder, whether it's a middleman, a distributor, whether it's the, like I said, the salesman for their productivity, I think the second big bucket is that digitization has now touched every aspect of the business. From the point at which I know how my materials are sourced, right? From today, I have my technology team, my R&D team. When I say technology, sorry, I mean R&D. My R&D team sits in their offices with a virtual set of glasses and is watching live, what do you call it, EMOs or live runs of the first time when an innovation is being worked on in the plant. And they're watching it live. They can interact and tell the person, no, I think you need to tweak that a little bit more, turn that up, turn that down, you know, and all that is live without having to travel. So to me, the second big thing is the second pillar that digitization has done for us is it's touched every aspect of the business. In the past, it was, you know, technology was limited. I think digitization is more universal. I think all of you are frozen again.
We can hear you. We're able to hear you. So
sorry. And the third big area I would say is, and I think the biggest shift in digitization is what it does for us. And what do I mean by what it does for us is, and I'll start with a simple, you know, it is from communication to engagement. A television ad helped me communicate. A product review on Amazon today allows me to engage. You can give me feedback. Whether that feedback is good or bad, separate issue. So from communication to engagement, from mass to personalization, and from personalization to mass. Otherwise, it was a one-way conversation, me talking to 1 billion people. Now I can have a conversation with you individually, and I can leverage you to talk to a smaller group of people as well. So I think that's the second. The third aspect of the biggest shift is from post-mortems to pre-mortems and even predictive. Right? In the past, you waited for information post-facto. You got the information, then did a post-mortem of it, and then made a choice to do something in the future. Today, with real-time information knowledge, thanks to digitization and even predictive analytics, we could almost say, hey, I'm getting it now, so I can decision-making can evolve. Like when my marketing, we have a consumer engagement center. At some point, I would love to bring your students down in here. We have something called a consumer engagement center in the office. So it's just nothing but live screens that shows all our assets in the digital world. And it's monitoring everything from tweets to Instagram posts to searches going on subjects to what's trending broadly. That allows the team today to instantly change things if they feel that, wow, that's just not working, or if that's trending, let me act upon it, right? So from what I would have waited for 3 months later to know about, I can now see live. So I call that from a postmortem to a pre-mortem, right? The other part that digitization has done of what it does for us is data. And very simply put, for me, data is nothing but the breadcrumbs of your behavior. So think of it as the good old Hansel and Gretel story, right? They followed the breadcrumbs because the breadcrumbs took a path. So similarly, if I came and I mean this with all due respect, you know, if I looked at your Amazon browsing history and your purchase history, I could be able to put a reasonably decent profile about you, right? So I think what digitization allows us to do is the access gives you what I call unfiltered behavioral truths. If I ask this group today, how many of you brush your teeth twice a day? All of you will raise your hands. I guarantee that, or at least 95%, the 5% will still say, let me not, I may not have. But 99% of us will raise our hands. But if I actually look at your toothpaste consumption behavior as to how many times you actually ordered on Amazon, and I measured it by usage occasion and number of people in your house, I know that will be untrue. Right? So data now unhides truths that words often disguise, right? And the last two for me on the same thing about the shifts are on accessibility. Education is a brilliant example of it, right? And I have to tell you the story. So I was in Rajasthan 6 weeks ago, maybe 8 weeks ago, and I was in a 2,000 population village, this is. And I walked into a small little kirana store. It was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There was this young guy, must have been 21. He was sitting behind the counter. So I said, can I come in? He said, of course. And he let me browse, and then he was busy. So I said, what are you doing? He said, no, I'm studying for my railway exams. I said, oh, really? What are you studying on? Oh, Unacademy. I said, that's interesting. Now, it didn't stop there. The best part of the story was what's next, right? So I was intrigued, and I asked a few more questions, and he gave me usual answers. Yes, it gives me access to this. Otherwise, I would have had to go 3 hours on a bus ride to XYZ classes. But here I can just sit down and have access. But that was the easy part. As I was talking to him, must have been another 5, 7 of his friends who showed up there, very intrigued by what the hell we were doing there, right? And so I started quizzing all of them. I said, what do you do? Why aren't you studying, right? So one of the guys goes, no. I don't study. I have my own YouTube channel. So I said, this is interesting now. So I said, okay, tell me more. So he says, no, my YouTube name is DJ Krishna. And then I said, show me the channel. So he said, oh, here. I said, what do you do? He said, oh, I mix music. I give it my own touch. And he started this in 2019. And he now has about 200 million views. Okay, so this is a guy, a 21-year-old from a 2,000 population village in Rajasthan. So I'm not even talking about a Maharashtra. I'm not talking about Gujarat. I'm not talking about TN, right? So accessibility is a two-way street. Accessibility to gain information and accessibility to share what you have as a skill. That's what digitization. And the last one is convenience, right? I mean, we're all living, breathing examples of convenience. You get what you want, when you want. Now, for those of us who perhaps grown up in Bombay City, would argue that the Kirana always did that for us. You called someone even at 10 o'clock at night, and that little boy would come with a loaf of bread, and you would write it in that khata book, and you would still be there. But that may not have been true for all cities anywhere in the country, right? But and convenience was defined by what can I access and when can I access it. So unless the store next to me, right? So for all the Bombayites in the room and anyone familiar with Alpha, unless Alpha had bought the latest music recorder, or Alpha had bought the latest cell phone, or Alpha had bought the latest cologne, you didn't have access to it. Today, you don't wait for Alpha to get anything. You just go search, someone has it, and you have it. So the convenience aspect of digitization is big. So, sorry, long answer, but to me, the simple 3 big, broad territories of what digitization has done to us and the consumer in general is spectrum of application being wider. It touches every aspect or every stakeholder. And then the biggest shift is what it does in terms of the role it plays in our lives. So it's gone from being a means to an end. It's now become a fundamental enabler for us to not just understand behavior, but then act and understand the repercussions of the actions we take real time.
Thank you so much. Really, it is wonderful to hear that you have touched upon all the areas. Really, that digital technology is going to rule over that. I think it is a very insightful thing for our students too. Thank you so much.
All right, my pleasure.
Thank you. So I'm going to mix up the order of questions a little bit. There's a very interesting question from Pratna. So Pratna is the dean of our first year studies. So all the students, she's responsible for nurturing them.
Hi. Thank you, Siddharth. Hello, Ram. It was really lovely listening to you and all the. I think there's some disturbance. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I wanted to know, I think what you shared was interesting, and I'm making copious notes because digitization is something which is, which is the need of the hour now, and we have been talking about it extensively. But on that note, I wanted to ask, I mean, yes, the pandemic has set us behind a little bit, but it has also pushed us forward in many, many ways. But in the current times, we are also looking at the sustainable development goals, which are very critical because the 2 years of pandemic has set those goals a little, there has been a little setback in that area. So what is Colgate's position on the SDGs? That is one. The second part was, because there are 17 goals, several targets, n number of indicators, how and what helped you kind of identify the specific one that you probably are focusing on, your company is focusing on, and what are some of the company's wide innovations that you have implemented for this?
A lovely question, and holds me accountable for this year in and year out in her role. So just when we think we're getting at a good place, she constantly challenges us to get even better and lead the conversation. Look, I could go on for hours on the Colgate conversation, and I'll use the word ESG because that's kind of how we look at it, because it's got a broader definition, including the governance aspect of it, which I think in this day and age, specifically when you start reading about some of the let's say incorrect practices and behaviors that a lot of corporations and or sometimes sadly enough employees as well deploy, I think governance carries equal weight in the ES and the G story around it, right? So I could honestly spend hours talking about this on what Colgate does. I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. I'll start with your second question because I think it'll help me link it back to the first one better. From a 17 goals point of view, I think, the way we have structured our ESG is, how do we leverage what we are good at and or how we potentially could impact the environment, right? And what do I mean by that? Our strength, if I take a broader global context, is about people, pets, and the planet, right? People and pets, for those of you who are unaware, Hill's Pet Food is also part of the Colgate Palmolive range of products. So any of you, those with pets like me, wonderful products. So we talk about the reimagining the future of people, pets, a healthier future for people, pets, and the planet. So I think we look to focus on what we are good at, because then the impact we can make is significantly greater. There is no point of me going and talking about a subject like, while it may be critical, if I take a subject such as, I'm trying to find a random enough subject now. If I take a subject like leprosy, terrible condition, and as human beings, something we must fight against. But as a company, very difficult for Colgate to be specifically creating impact besides just donating money towards a cause, right? And then you know how it works. Sometimes the money donated at each level gets utilized, and what ultimately the impact is variable. So I think our first effort is about making sure we focus on what we believe we are good at and therefore have a tangible, measurable impact, right, on people, pets, and the planet. The second thing is, we also keep in mind the categories that we operate in, and therefore the natural resources that we tend to sometimes use or end up consuming, that we need to be mindful about, specifically in the context of the planet. So water being a great example, right? I mean, if you think about it, almost every one of our products, you need water to use it, right? You can't brush your teeth without it. So one of our biggest campaigns we run is we say, turn off the tap, because the simple task you save 4 liters, by the way, in a 2-minute brushing experience. If you keep the tap off, that's 4 liters saved, right? So that's where we start from. So the sprint for us really comes down to a few where we believe we can genuinely make a difference in. So on the basis of that, we've crafted what we call is our ASG strategy, and it's simplified in the word smile. The acronym is smile. It's Colgate, so obviously the smile has to come with it, and it's got 3 pillars. Again, pillar number 1 is driving social impact, so the S of social impact. The second is helping millions of homes. So the millions, MIL. So you got to imagine this. It's actually a lovely little placard that we have. So it's the S from social impact. It's the millions from helping millions of homes, and it's preserving our environment, and the E from the environment. So that's how the smile gets created. And under each one of those, we've got programs. Let me take the first one. So driving social impact. Our focus is on 2 things. One is specifically helping young people in our communities thrive. So our focus is, and in India, we tend to focus more so on women more than anything else. So we put 2 programs in place. One is called Keep India Smiling. So it's a scholarship program which we give access. You basically apply for it. In fact, Mary Combe was the one who inaugurated the whole exercise for us about 3.5 years ago. And now we've been able to scale it up significantly. But fundamentally, it's a scholarship program where you can apply, and there is a panel, includes Mary Combe sits, and they judge who should be the deserving candidate, and then we obviously look to make sure that we give them that scholarship. And again, it's linked back to a future. As the classic saying goes, we want to teach them how to fish so that they can feed themselves for the rest of their lives, right? Rather than just donating the money to them. The second one, specifically now with Seva Mandir in Rajasthan, we look at more rural women, and how can we help with giving them vocational skills that once again translate into livelihoods, right? So that's just an example of under the social umbrella. In fact, the one I'm the most excited about, Indu's aware, she'll get to see a full detailed one. I'm happy to, it's not yet gone public, but here I can say it publicly because we've signed across the dotted line, is Mission Smile. And Mission Smile is a partnership we've just undertaken with a company. I don't know any of you who are aware with kids with cleft lips. You know how socially debilitating it is for a child to have, you and I take it for granted, to be honest. And I've seen this personally, having done this program in Mexico and a few other locations that I've lived in. Can you imagine waking up and not wanting to look at yourself in the mirror because it scares you? Thank God none of us have ever had to suffer that in our lives. And, we all understand our culture. Imagine this now for a rural girl child in India. Because of and I hate using these words, but because of that monstrous look, she will almost be pushed back even more. So I'm really, really happy we're partnering with Mission Smile, where we're going to go and it's a long-term program. We're going to start conducting cleft surgeries to start fixing that cleft. And I can tell you one thing, I've sat there for the first time when the child looks at herself or himself after the surgery and sees that normalness. I mean, I can't tell you how heartwarming that moment is. If you don't cry, I don't know what else to, I think you're missing some element as a human being. So I think that's another example of something I'm personally passionate about. We're going to launch it live. You'll see some things coming on it, but we're going live. We're kicking it off with about 10 cities or 11 cities and then scaling it over time. So that's an example of the first bucket. The second bucket is on millions of homes. Recyclable tubes is an innovation we brought to the industry. We're the first ones in the world, first ones in India to launch recyclable tubes. And in fact, choicefully, we've kept the technology open source. We did not patent it because we said there's no point us doing it and then 30-40% of the market not doing it, right? I mean, it defeats the purpose, right? So we actually choicefully left it as open source. So we are hoping that the others in the industry also take it on. Now, it comes at a cost. We've chosen to believe that that should not be the barrier. We're hoping others in the industry also have similar principles as us. So that's an example of the second one. On the third bucket of preserving the environment, frankly, that's the easiest, to be very honest. Whether it's elimination of plastic because of plastic recollection, whether it's about conserving water, whether it's about sustainable energy, all our plants have solar power, whether it's about our renewable energy focus, whether it's about sustainable sourcing. Those are frankly the easier ones, to be honest, because there's enough and more technologies available. There's enough and more best practices that can be shared across industries. Solar power is solar power, whether I'm using it to make toothpaste or whether I'm using it to manufacture cars or whether I'm using it to just light highways. The fundamental technology remains the same, right? So that aspect of the pillar, frankly, becomes a lot easier for us. So these are just broadly the areas. I think where we've come up short, and I'll be the first one to admit it, while we've done a lot, Pratna, I don't think we've done a great job of talking about it correctly. Because I'm a firm believer that ESG must be done as a natural course of the way we conduct business. It should not be done to gain brownie points and score marks because of that. So now, having said that, I don't think we've put enough of our work in public domain. So when someone searches for something associated with us, they find it easily. And I think that's one of the areas we're actively looking to address. That's one area for me. I think the second area, which is a broader industry challenge, when it comes to the environment, like I said, the metrics of measurement are easy. Plastic collection. I know how much plastic I put out there, therefore I know how much I have to collect. Renewable energy, sourcing, material recyclability. Those are very, very clear numerical values one can put down on. Measuring impact on social things. Like how do you, and I give the example of Mission Smile that I just so passionately spoke about. How can I measure the impact of that? Right? Because how do I measure a child's future and what that change and what the ripple effect it could have, not just on her family or his family, their future families, their future children, right? How does one measure the impact of that? I think some of these things are the real challenges we are grappling with. How do you put a valuation, and I don't mean a dollar valuation, don't get me wrong, but how do I put even any kind of impact measurement to it, right? A simple thing like educating everybody, going back to my example of brushing twice a day, educating everybody on brushing twice a day. The long-term value of that can only be measured in things like number of incidents of cavities, but I will need 10 years worth of research to then measure that, right? So I think that's one of the, and I'm just giving you the challenges I'm facing. If I take other examples, the areas are the same, but the metrics and the impact measurement across certain industries also become a little bit more challenging on that front. Like I said, I personally am extremely passionate on ESG. If you didn't realize that, I can go on and on for hours on what this is. Perhaps a follow-up call would be the best way to do it. But hopefully I give you a glimpse of what we're doing and some of the real challenges we're facing.
Thank you so much. I think we will take you up on that follow-up call someday for sure. But thank you very much for the detailed conversation. I think it aligns with also what we've been trying to achieve at Atlas University. Thank you very much.
So before we get into the the student segment, there's one question that we have between the the academics and the students is the all-important placement office. So if I could have Prachi Pawar, who of course also has had students work with Colgate in the past 2 years. Prachi, your question for Mr. Raghavan.
Yes, thank you, Siddharth. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Raghavan. It is always a great pleasure to have you on campus. And thank you for such a candid conversation. I mean, this was much more than what we expected. Absolutely great hearing you. So my question to you is, this is an extension of your conversation with Dr. Kamachi Iyer about the digitization. So now that you explained us all the areas where digitization is happening, and I'm sure that has affected the kind of people you are recruiting. So my question to you is, what are the new roles that you've been recruiting for, and what are the skill sets that you're looking for?
So I think, okay, let me, what are the roles that we're recruiting for and skill sets, right? So I think roles are relatively easy. Thanks to digitization, what you're seeing is the birth and I think the long-term modeling of what I will call as specialists. In the past, and please don't get me wrong, I think we all got used to cookie clutter models, right? I mean, you had to do an IIT IIM, you had to do, if you did medicine, you probably would, even in medicine, you'd only go down the path of neurosurgery. I mean, there was a hierarchy of what you would have done, right? Or expectations out of you. And I think that's the biggest shift that digitization has brought about. Now there are highly specialized vocations that I think will only continue to get bigger and bigger and will have career streams in themselves. Now, whether this is coding, whether this is analytics, whether this is content development, whether this is behind the scenes on personalization at scale, it could be any of these. And I think all of them will become specialized roles. I'll give a marketing example for a minute. The philosophy, when TV replaced radio, let's put it this way, you never bought in a media person who was a TV specialist, right? But as search has become so critical, just about every organization today has a search specialist. Think about it, right? So that was a job that never existed. And even within the world of search, and I now will humanize it to every one of you, and be honest when you think about this, you don't have to tell me. What you type in on Google versus what you type in on Amazon are very different, right? On Google, I want to see smiles and those cryptic ones in this next statement of mine. On Google, you share your deepest, darkest secrets that you would not even share with your best friend, your parents, your sibling, anybody else. You will ask Google that question, right? Now, imagine as a search specialist, the knowledge, I won't know who asked the question, but I certainly know the kind of trending it has and the temperature, as in how hot, cool, etc. it is. So suddenly, search may become the single most powerful method of getting insights in the future, right? So didn't exist. The job in itself didn't exist. So I think the first point on roles, I think it's going to be jobs or roles like these that will see themselves become more and more critical in an organization, right? That's one. The second part of it, as a result of that, I think you'll see a balancing act in organizations between what I would call generalists and specialists. There was a tendency to be a little bit more of a generalist in the past. I think points were given towards that. I think you'll start seeing a difference kick in, right? I think those would be the two biggest shifts that I would say that digitization is going to bring about. Implications on a broader basis for me, I would be a few. I think number one is organizations have to broaden their hunting grounds. You cannot just say, I want to go to a business school, or I want to go only to an engineering school, or I want to go only to you'll have to go to humanities, you'll have to go to engineering, you'll have to go to HR, you'll have to go to arts, you'll have to go everywhere in the future. Now, based on the industry that you're in, the mix will vary for sure, right? So a hospital may still have 70% going to medical schools for recruitment. But even a hospital tomorrow may start talking about human experience and may need a design specialist to design the entire process of admission through to leaving a hospital. Right? So imagine now designing an experience that most of us would agree is a painful one. Right? So suddenly now even a hospital needs a design specialist. You would not have thought about that 5 years ago. Right? So I think your hunting grounds would vary. The third one for me is the process in which you will bring in this talent, and more importantly, the environments you have to create to nurture and incubate this talent will change radically. Why do I say that? Because fundamentally their thought process on how they think is different. Second, therefore, how they process information is different. And third, how they're going to react and behave is going to be different. Right? So if I bring a doctor in and I ask them to run a machine, not going to work. So the impetus on organizations to be mindful of culture and environments on how to nurture a very diverse range of talent is going to be the third biggest implication to us. And the last one, and perhaps for me, at least at Colgate, I know one of the most important ones is about how do you build and inculcate these experiences in people's lives upfront in their careers. So in fact, my HR team has just, Meenal introduced me as I joined as a trainee, right? So back in the day, the program was called the Business Leadership Program, and we hadn't changed it, I think, for 23 years or something like that, by the way. So in fact, my HR team has just remodeled it completely and have called it LEAP. And LEAP is about Leadership Experiences and Advancement Program. And we've shifted, instead of saying, hey, this is the only model that you need in your emerging years, we think the first 6 years of your life have to be about experiences where you get knowledge on the core, but you're also privy and have hands-on experience with transformations. So you kind of upfront learn both and experience it by doing, not necessarily by just a theoretical model. And the doing doesn't have to be in your own office. So what we've chosen to do is a lot of our people are actually sent off to startups. So we actually take the talent and I go and sit them in a startup and they learn there. Because I look at the positive benefit to it, right? They're learning from someone who is at the transformative edge of doing something. It's their core business. So the candidate is happy because they're learning that's something that's cutting edge. I'm thrilled because they're going to come in with that expertise by learning from someone who's better than me at it. So I think the biggest thing for me is about how do you build those experiences, not just for the foundational years of your career, but then also looking at aspiring and what I often call the seasoned group of people in an organization. And it's not about, people use the word rewiring and re-engineering. I don't call it any of that. I just think it's about exposure. And I think it's about exposure. And that's what we're looking with LEAP. While we're using it as an experiment, not an experiment, it's live now, on the foundational years from year 1 to year 6. We're now realizing that it's got far greater implications. It can go on to someone like me as well. Year 24, I should still be doing as much of it as someone in year 1 is. And so much so that I have a mentor. He's a data scientist in our team. He's all of 26 years old. Once a month, he sits with the CFO and myself on a 3-hour session, educating us on what analytics of the future is going to look like and therefore what we can do with it. So I hope I kind of answered the 2 questions that you had.
Absolutely, you did. Very, very insightful. Very insightful. Thank you, Mr. Raghavan. Thank you so much.
I think the link between digitization, data, and behavior, right? I think that itself provides such a valuable opportunity for us at business schools and universities to build out the profiles of the future. Talking about the profiles of the future, I'm going to move on to...
If you don't mind, can I just close that one?
Yes, yes.
Interesting subject for me. So data is as I said, is the breadcrumbs of your behavior. It's the what. It's the what you do. There's the human aspect, which you still have to close, which is the why you do it. And data doesn't give you that. And I give you a classic example. So my mom, who's going to turn 75 in about 4 weeks from now, right? So came to stay with us for about 6 weeks. And she's very digitally savvy because her grandkids are all about iPads and stuff. So she's been FaceTiming them forever. So she's very digitally savvy, but she refuses to use her own personal credit card on Amazon. Just refuses to. Now, she's got a hobby. She loves reading period English romantic novels, right? So set in the 1700s and the 1800s. And of course, she's Tamilian, so she also loves Tamil literature. So she came home one day and said, hey, I'm out of my books. I'm not buying. You buy and send it to my iPad. Okay, cool. I did it. Now, all of you who have a Kindle or Amazon, you know what happens next, right? So the breadcrumbs of behavior was what? Suddenly, Ram started ordering period English romantic novels and Tamil books of literature. So Amazon's algorithm takes over and instantly starts recommending me for the next 8 weeks of my life. I get books on period in English romance. I was like, wow. So, you know, and this is the point I was trying to close the loop on. Digitization, unbelievable, tells you the what. You still need human design to tell you the why. You can't, you know, you cannot break these two apart. They're interlocked.
Machine will never get rid of man, right? And man will never get rid of machine. So I think we're here to stay. You know, Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0, as they say. Can we have Ayush from our MBA, first year MBA? I think he's got a interesting question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So first of all, thank you, sir, for giving us your time. So my question for you is, whenever you're interviewing a candidate, what are the 3 personality traits that you usually look out for?
So first thing, I used to answer that question, and I will tell you to stop recording, because then everyone will know what questions I ask. Right? Listen, I think very frankly, the interview process per se is a very difficult one, simply because you're gauging someone in a 30, 45, at best 1 hour process, right? And in a process where both of us are putting our best foot forward and we're not seeing our true natures play themselves out in a genuine work setting when life is what it should be. Having said that, it is what it is, and we therefore live and learn with it. So for me, whether you're a fresher, whether you're someone with 20 years of experience, in every candidate or aspiring person who wants to join us, I look for 3 things, right? My first thing that I look for is, how do you think? So what's your process of thinking? And what do I mean by that? You know, in my younger days, when I was a little bit more Machiavellian and, wicked, and I'd have a drier sense of humor, I guess, I would, a lot of times people would have met 2-3 people before they meet me. So I would actually ask the candidate, oh, who did you meet? So they would tell me, oh, I met so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. Great. Then I would ask them the next question. I said, if you were me, which one of these 3 people would you hire? And which one of the 3 people would you fire? I didn't care what they said. I was interested in how their brain worked, right? How were they processing information? Were they genuinely looking at multiple variables? So when someone said, no, I would fire Ram. Okay, why? Because I thought Ram did not ask me these questions. I thought Ram came up short on this, this, and this. So then I'm evaluating 2 things. I'm evaluating your process of thinking, whether you call it presence of mind, whether you call it common sense, whether you call it ability to think on your feet. You can use different words for it, but I'm fundamentally evaluating how you think, right? To understand, are you using all your senses? Are you using a broader spectrum of evaluation in order to look to solve the problem placed at you, right? Think about it. You had equal information, equal time, but you made a decision. I'm trying to understand what drove your decision making. That's the first thing I look at. So the process or how you think. The second thing I look at is your values. Now, everyone will talk about honesty, integrity, etc., etc. You know, no one's going to stand up in an interview and tell you, no, 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 please hire me. I'm the world's greatest liar, or you know, I have zero value in an interview. So what I always ask for is what did you like or not like? And I don't even say like or not like. I will use questions a little bit more polarizingly. If you were the CEO of the company you are leaving, what would you change? So if you're coming out of school, I would ask you, look, if tomorrow, if you were in Dr. Shani's shoes, what would you change about the school? Tell me 3 things. So I look to see where your value systems come from. And that allows me to gauge culture fit. So the first thing is how you think. The second thing is the fit, the greatest, I mean, as best as I can, how will you fit in with the culture, right? And the third variable is the effort you've taken. See, in the past, when I interviewed at Colgate, I had very limited access to what Colgate did, right? You had annual reports which were physical in nature, and you had to go, and if you weren't a shareholder, you had to go write for it, find out where it is, get one copy, read it. You had to find who alumni would have been, could have been. You would have perhaps spoken to some seniors in your business school or wherever and reached out, right? So today, I always ask people, you know, and how do I measure effort taken is what kind of research have they done before they've come into the interview? What kind of questions do people ask me? Right? That to me is an indicator of your are you looking for a job or you're looking for a career? So 3 big variables that I look at, whether it's a fresher or, like I said, someone with 20 years of experience. It's how you think, your values, and the effort, your interest. What I'm gauging with your effort you've taken is your genuine interest in being a part of the family.
Thank you. I think values, you know, thought process, values, and genuine interest, right? All 3, you know, are really the bedrock of, you know, who you want to work with, right? Because then, you know, they've got your back in that way. To wrap up this segment, I'm going to call on Afreen. I think talking about values and family, she has an interesting question which ties in, and then we'll move on to the summary of the session.
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. To begin with, I would just like to appreciate one point, which you said that data gives you the truth, that the words often disguise. That was one line I immediately noted down, and I actually saw the smile campaign throughout the annual report of Colgate, which was very attracting. So I want to ask you, I have already taken a note of how old you are, considering the years for which you've been in the company. So I want to ask you one question, that what is it that has kept you so closely binded with the company for so long? And how can we use that to be consistent? Because after all, life is all about consistency.
So I'll start by saying, I guess I've been tremendously fortunate. Right. I keep constantly pinching myself about that fact. That I've just been fortunate enough to find a place where I've had the opportunity to constantly grow. So the first reason I've always stayed has been because I've never stopped growing. Just when I felt, or every time I felt that my growth or my learning journey was plateauing, I was given another assignment. I was given something new or something else. So it was, I never, the proverbial carrot is still something I'm looking to grasp in my hand, but I know it's within my reach, right? So my learning journey and my growth journey has never slowed down. In fact, I would argue it's gone the reverse. The more I've hung around, the challenges in that journey have only become that much greater and that much more enjoyable, right? That's the first reason I've hung around. The second, it's really nice in this day and age. Like I said, when I think about why we exist, we fundamentally bring smiles and with a healthier future for people, pets, and the planet. I mean, that's a lovely place to be, right? I mean, you talk, now it's cool to talk about health and all these things. We were talking about health a long time ago. So when you know that you are fundamentally bringing a smile to people's lives, honestly, it becomes a lot easier for me to come into work every day and do something about that. Now, that doesn't mean that other brands or industries are bad, right? Because in their own way, they will also have their purpose. I think it's about making sure that you feel good about that purpose. So second reason why I hung around is the fact that I love what we do and who we do it for, right? And the tangibleness of the results you see with it. The third variable for me is culture. And I say this because I'm a big believer on it. And I think my single biggest job as a managing director, beyond, of course, the hard numbers and the P&L aspects of it, is culture. My job, I always believe, is to make sure that we continue to attract and retain the world's best. Because they believe it's an environment where everybody has an equal opportunity to thrive, not just do well, but thrive. And I look at that in the context of what my own personal experiences have been. The company had the courage to send me to China as the first non-Chinese speaking person ever. Right? I mean, I could tell you many stories similar to what others have experienced on the same front. So when you look at a culture that allows that, and I never felt alien in that environment ever. So the fact that I have, you can go to any Colgate office anywhere in the world and feel exactly the same, because the people around you are going to treat you and they're going to behave in such a wonderfully similar manner. That's the culture of the company, right? So so it's not just, the second point I made was what I enjoy doing what I do. The third point therefore becomes I enjoy doing it with the people I do it with. Sure, we have our disagreements. Sure, we have, moments where we are unhappy when things don't go our way. Sure, but that's like any family, right? I mean, there is no family I know that doesn't have its ups and downs. But at the end of the day, you're still unwilling to part ways. And to me, that's culture. So that's the unwritten bond that is, the thread, that's the invisible thread that's holding you in.
Okay, I completely found absolute relevance in the answer. Thank you so much. And I'm going to continue to begin my day with Colgate.
Don't forget an end.
And end. Definitely.
Ideally 3
Thank
points.
you so much.
Thank you.
I stick to 2. Thank you so much.
I think, Ram, you should ask Siddharth a question. How many times during the day do you brush his teeth? 3.
By the way, in Brazil, as a culture, is the one country that actually brushes 3 times a day. The simple reason is it was fundamentally put into school behavior. So at lunchtime, as a child, the government institutionalized a program to brush your teeth after lunch. So it just was a behavior that stuck with most adults. And as they grew into adulthood, they would go and brush in the afternoon as well. So it's a interesting trivia.
Yeah, great. So Sid, are you through with?
Yeah, so I just wanted to, before I hand over to you, Mr. Raghavan, thank you for a captivating afternoon. I think the time flew by. We can have a part 2, part 3, and part 4 whenever time permits, because there's some really interesting answers I think that students and faculty are looking forward from you. But really appreciate you coming and inspiring our faculty and our students. And hope to see you in person soon.
I look forward to that. Thank you once again, really.
Yeah, but it's not coming to an end. We just to do a summary, our students, and I've got some nights with me who work overnight, and here they are, they've put things together. Everything you said is now on paper and on the slide. So here are the leadership lessons from the pandemic. And I think the most important one I picked up from this one was that I think mental wellness will need significant attention, and the power of relationships. Let's go to the next one. Then, of course, you talked about driving social impact, and everybody knows about the SMILE, SM, the social impact, millions of homes and environment. And I'm glad that you focused your ESG. I think, Pratna, that's a lesson for us to also look at this. The next one, of course, let's go next.
Yeah, this is the next one, ma'am.
Okay, this is the next one. It's the impact of digitization on FMCG. A great question. And this, again, I think, as you can see, that the spectrum of application has broadened. It's universal and it affects all. Let's go next. And digitization is what of the behavior? Human design is the why of the behavior. I think something that we all keep to ourselves every time we talk about it. How to nurture the jobs of the future. Highly specialized vocations are coming up. Broaden your hunt. This is a thing to the companies to say that go to many different schools and areas to look for young people. Environments to be created to nurture talent. And how do you build the first experiences? I think that's so well said. I always feel that as soon as a student enters the institution, what is the feeling that that student is getting? And that first experience is so important. Let's go next. Advice to students entering the workforce. How do you think? What is your value? And what is your genuine interest? I think that's all, is it? Okay, now I've been waiting and waiting for this moment, and everybody, please, now freshen up, because here's something that his son did to me, and I am going to do it to him. All right. Now, his young man was so amazing. I tell you, Ram, compliments to you. If he's sitting around, you can ask him to join in. It's compliments to you. He's in the American school, and he had to do some write-up, and he decided to do a write-up on me because being the sheriff of Mumbai, and then his questions were amazing. And then he did a rapid fire for me. So let's go. A rapid fire for Ram. And I was waiting to get back to it.
I knew there was a catch. I knew there was a catch to that one.
There was a catch. Okay. But this is fun. This is a lot of fun. Okay. So let's have fun. Okay. What makes you jump out of bed with joy?
Golf.
All right. What scares you?
Nothing.
All right. What's your favorite drink? You can be true about it.
A lovely glass of Shiraz.
Okay, very good. What's your favorite toothpaste?
I have many. Total Breath Health is my, if you want very specifically, it's Colgate Total Breath Health. There's actually something new that's going to hit the market very soon. You're aware of it, Indu.
We'll wait till it comes.
It's going to revolutionize the world of whitening. So
yes,
that's my next best.
But I think I moved from Max Fresh to now the Colgate Visible. Instant Visible. All right. And the last question is, who's your favorite person?
My wife.
All right. Good. I hope she's listening. And just before I did this, because he did a lot of these to me all the time. In between his questions, he would do this. And just before I did this at lunchtime, I said, let me test out, the part that you talked about, how do you think, right? So this is a part about how do you think. I said, let me test out with a 4.5-year-old, and maybe Aditya, you could play. The first question is, of course, what makes you jump out of bed? That didn't get recorded, but let's go and make it loud. What?
Dolphins.
Dolphins.
All
right. Dolphin. What scares you?
Ghost stories.
Ghost stories. Okay. What's your favorite drink?
Gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic. Wow. What's your favorite toothpaste?
Strawberry and blueberry.
Strawberry and blueberry toothpaste.
Well, yes. And who is your favorite person? Alina, your friend.
All right. So that's what it is. So now you know what the new toothpaste that you have to create strawberries and blueberries.
I got to get blueberries in there somehow now.
So that's been amazing. Thank you so much, Ram. And it's been the faculty or all the faculty here, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this much more when you're on campus interacting with them. But as you said, you talked about the Consumer Engagement Center. We're going to do something like this here, on campus, and so that we can work together with you on this, because the consumer insight, that is something that, as you even talked about, very important. Nothing better than getting it from the Gen Z themselves while they are on it, if they brush their teeth, that is. All right. Okay, so that's it. And if anyone else wants to say, you're most welcome. But Ram, I just want to say a big thank you.
Oh, listen, thank you again. Honestly, it's genuinely an honor to be a part of it. I had the good fortune of even visiting. I was looking forward to coming back, actually. But I'm sure hopefully this is going to be a short and uneventful spike. Fingers crossed. And we will be meeting in person sooner than later, hopefully. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.